Hey guys, it's Chris and Jamie here, and we're going to do a different style video today. It's a turn-by-turn analysis of my first open track day at the firm. I have plenty of SCCA autocross experience, but not too much out on the open road course. With that said, Jamie was kind enough to ride shotgun with me, and then we switched and had plenty of on-track time, kind of giving me pointers along the way. Jamie's been racing for nearly 30 years, both on the autocross side and the road course, behind the wheel of plenty of cars. But before we get started with the analysis, Jamie, tell us a little bit more about Florida International Rally and Motorsport Park.
It's a 1.5 mile road course. Driver training facility is what it was originally built for. It's a good course for learning, car placement, brake points, basics of performance driving. Good track for testing the car setup. It's very brake intense course. It can be a very technical course, but it's really good for training drivers. It's what it was meant for. For today's event, we took Chris's GT350 out. Chris, can you tell us a little bit about the car?
Sure. It's a 2018 GT350. It has pretty much every Steeda component underneath, including our MagneRide dual rate springs, a ton of IRS components. And in terms of powertrain, it's relatively stock with the exception of a Steeda air filter and our Steeda Resonator Elite H-pipe. But in terms of brakes and tires, that's most important as well. Brakes, Hawk Performance DTC 60s up front and DTC 30s in the back with the factory rotors. And in terms of wheels, we had 19x11 gloss titanium Steeda Tridents all the way around, wrapped in 305 Goodyear Eagle F1 Supercar 3R tires that had a few events on them, but naturally a great tire to learn on, especially at a track like this. Well, Jamie, I'm excited. Now that we know the track, we know the car, let's break it down turn by turn.
Well, we're going to start with exiting from turn 1 going to turn 2 because it's a good reference point to start for the lap. The two good places to do it is either, like I said, exiting 1 going towards 2 or the entry going into 10. You can see the cones there to your left. Those are the brake markers going up the hill towards 2. And you can see how much of the track you're not using. You're not letting the car move all the way to the outside. That makes your entry going into 2 a little bit sharper. You have to use more brake to get the car slowed to be able to get the car to turn in because of the angle that you're going in is just a little bit tighter.
And more steering input too.
More steering, more brake, slows the car down. If you use all of the inside curbing there in 3, it can upset the car.
Right.
So you don't want to, get up on top of it. You want to get close, but you really just don't want to beat the car up for no reason because it's going to upset how much speed you can carry coming off of there because you have to go all the way to the right to get a good run going at turn 4. While this particular shot doesn't show it, you didn't go far enough over to the right side of the track.
Use the whole track.
And it pinches off your exit, so it just, cuts how much speed you can carry out. And again, look at how much room at your turn. Well, they put a cone out there for the basic turn-in point for turn 4. This is an off-camber corner.
It's definitely deceptive.
It's deceptive in how much speed you can carry in and how much you can maintain and carry out. Typically, you're going to be down to mid-70s in this corner from almost 100 or right at 100. You're going to drop down to about 75 miles an hour. And as soon as you...
And look at that, you touched the curb. Look at the right side of the car. So you actually touched the curb with the right side of the car. I never made it that far over.
But you have to use as much of the track through here as possible to make this a more open turn, especially considering it's off camber. It makes it harder to get back on the accelerator quick.
Right.
Because you'll get wheel spin, the back of the car will kick out. It'll have more oversteer than you would normally have in a corner like this, and it can reduce how much speed you have, so you have to open the corner up as much as possible. You don't want to use as much of that concrete as you think you want to because the end of it is really, it falls off, it's really abrupt, and again, it'll upset the car. So you want to make sure that you are completely on the pavement, but don't cheat yourself out of real estate there.
So this is probably the most telling part of the entire track when it comes to real estate. Look how close you are to the edge of the pavement versus me. Like, that's easily probably 2.5 feet.
Mm-hmm. Now this is actually a little bit of a dog leg through here. There's a couple of different ways you can take it. You can hold it all the way over to the left, let the car, coming off of turn 4, let the car come back towards the center of the track and then go back to the left for the dog leg, or you can hold it out towards the center of the track a little bit further. It's really car dependent and speed dependent on how you do this. I've always had a tendency to get the car back over to the left a little bit quicker.
There isn't necessarily one that's better than the other, though, right?
It's really car dependent and what your car can do and what your brakes can do and how you can get the car through 5, how your braking zone is, how the car's handling. Coming into 5, this is a fairly high speed brake zone. In this car, we were right around 100 to 103 coming into there. You're going to be scrubbing it down to between 45 and 50 miles an hour at the slowest point of the corner. I usually brake a little bit hard, a little bit too early for this corner. It's deceptively tight, and it's one of the places on this track where while it looks like you have good runoff room, it's really rough if you go off in 5.
Right.
And you don't want to put the car through that or yourself through the embarrassment of having to get,
pulled out,
towed back up to the paddock area.
What are your thoughts on turn-in point here for both of us?
I'm a little bit early on turn-in, but it's just this particular lap and what the car felt like at the time.
Right.
Watching all of the videos, all the footage of you, this is your normal turn-in point, which is a little bit early and a little bit too close to the center of the track. So you're making that
sharper input.
You're making it a sharper turn than it needs to be, and you can see that in where your hand placement is and how much the wheel is rotated in this turn.
Right.
You can see that you have way more steering input, and it makes you have to correct coming back out.
And that's true, 100%.
So it's
because the car was probably pushing a little bit, and that's why I like the car. I kind of had it was walking out a little bit on me.
The car is going to walk all the way out to the edge of the pavement and further if you don't stop it, but the car is going to have a tendency to move over to the left.
Right.
And you want to hold it as close to the edge of the pavement on the left side as possible.
Given the next turn.
From turn 5 to turn 6 is a short acceleration run, and if the car is upset any at all, you're just going to get wheel spin while you're trying to accelerate. Turn 6 is, it's just a simple late apex turn. Use as much room as you need, especially on the exit. You don't want to step off right there. You can see in the frame that
a lot of other people that have.
Yeah, it's a very popular place for people to, try to get as much space as possible, and that drop off is about 2 to 3 inches from the pavement to the dirt.
That's violent, yeah.
And it's enough that you can feel it in the car, and it upsets the car when you come off of there. Plus, you're just dragging up dirt onto the track.
Right.
The biggest thing is to be smooth coming out of here because of the acceleration run coming to the S's. You need to get maximize your acceleration space. Get as much room as you can.
So getting up to speed. It looks like, it's interesting. So it looks like you breathe on the gas a little bit. I actually tap the brakes, I think.
Depending on the car, because I was there with the owner of the car and they were able to see what I was doing to their car. I didn't push as hard through the S's as I typically would. My entry into here is usually around 95 miles an hour. And this car especially, cars of this power level, usually about 95. In the EcoBoost, that's about 90.
Right.
And the EcoBoost, I don't breathe off. I stay on the gas. I don't brake at the first
Interesting.
curb, and I come off the gas at the second. With this car, I breathed off the gas just a little bit to get the car settled before I hit the first one.
Right.
As soon as the car basically cleared it, I was back on the gas briefly.
Let's go back real quick. I want to talk about car placement. So look where you are. You're basically doing everything you can to make this a straight line.
Yep.
And I mean, there's still paint showing on mine.
If you look at the curbing as it's going past the car, you won't see but just the edge of the concrete. As opposed to you can still see the paint.
Right.
Now, is it a bad line through there? No, it's not. It all depends on if you're trying to maximize lap time, or if you're, trying to drive the appropriate line for what an S is. But for maximum lap time, it's going over the top of the curbing. At the A-pillar of the car, you can see where the curbing is in relation to the car, between the mirror and the A-pillar on my side. See it right there as you're approaching it there to your right. See how much of it you're actually using. If you get too far over, then you're hanging the tires over into the dirt. Same thing through here. This is the last set of curbs through the S's before you brake for turn 7. You can ride that curb and it's rough. You can go completely over the top of it, but the car is going to become really unsettled as you come back onto the track.
Well, given the immediate left you have to make to get towards turn, 8 at that point? 7.
Well, this is you're coming up on turn 7, and at this point, you're in a fairly straight line going to turn 7, but this is the slowest corner on the track. This is the slowest point, is the brake zone turn in for turn 7.
I mean, but coming off of this, you don't want to jump off that curbing too violently because you're going to upset the back of the car.
You're going to upset the car. You're going to upset the placement of the car coming into this brake zone, because you want the car as flat as possible, straight as possible, where you can brake in a straight line, carry your speed as long as possible.
And you can see here how much farther out, again, using the real estate that you're paying for here, how much farther out that you are in comparison to me.
Well, typically, the car I got a little bit too much of that curb and it upset the car a little bit. I'm usually a little bit further over to the left. I usually like to have the left front tire just on the other side of that concrete strip that you see. Just barely straddle it and then start my turn in towards the apex of this corner. I like to be a little bit deeper on the entry, and then it gives me a longer acceleration run coming out of here. I can get on the gas sooner. Now also you can see how much steering input you have in here, where you're hand over hand, got your arms twisted up like a pretzel.
Definitely learning here on proper steering wheel inputs and where to keep my hands.
Well, this is
look how much that steering wheel's clocked on mine in comparison to yours. You never really go past that.
Part of it's car placement, that you were too far to the inside of the corner and had to make the corner sharper than it needed to be.
Right.
It took longer for you to unwind the car and get back to the accelerator. In this car, your GT350 with 373 gears, we were doing it on this day, going through turn 7 in 3rd gear.
Right.
Just, it helps to cut out some of the wheel spin that you can get just trying to flat foot out of there.
We probably could have done second, though,
if it was at an event where we were going for actual lap times, I would have gone back to second and tried to get as hard a run out of there as possible. But for what we were doing on this day, staying in 3rd gear through there, it just takes it's just one less thing to do.
Right.
You're not having to upshift, downshift at this corner, because immediately, if you're in second, as soon as you get the car straight, you're going to be looking to go to third gear.
Right.
So you've eliminated a downshift coming in and an upshift coming out. Now can be a very intimidating turn 8, because you have water barriers on the entry over to the right side, the orange plastic, that's all water barrier. And then you come up on the Armco to the outside, and if you're not comfortable with the speed that you're running and climbing the banking there, it can definitely make you think twice about the speed that you're carrying.
100%.
Now, again, because this wasn't my car and I wasn't here for an absolute lap time, I tried to keep a pretty conservative line through this whole turn. There's a couple of things you can do to maximize corner exit. I broke a little bit harder going in than I typically would have, didn't carry as much speed towards the apex because it's up at the wall. There's actually a cone hung on the wall. You want to get close to the wall at that point, but I wasn't, willing to have to take over car payments. So I kind of kept it conservative through there.
Right.
Car has a little bit of push as you start to
get on the accelerator.
As you get to the second apex of the corner, you can get a little bit of understeer. How you deal with that understeer as you're exiting this corner makes a big difference on how much speed you can carry down the what's basically the longest straightaway here, which is from turn 8 to turn 10. We didn't use turn 9, which is called the shoebox.
Right.
They don't typically use that at normal open track days.
Real quick though, we've talked about this turn at length in the past. And there are obviously different lines that you can take going into this turn, the intimidating factor with the wall being there and everything else. But I was always taught to, if you have a double apex turn, you toss away the first one so you can nail the second on exit. So my question for you is, what are your thoughts on car placement here? Am I pinching myself off by being too close on the inside?
No, because if you look at your steering wheel position to where you are on the track, and especially up against the curbing, you're not pinching the car off to get it in that far, and it will help your exit because you don't have as much steering input to have to account for as you're straightening the car up.
Got it. And here's the straightaway we all love. Now we're getting into the braking. And at top speed around in this straight is what, about 120, 121?
Depends on the car. In your car, we were...
maybe 118.
I think the maximum, we were right there. We were just under 120. Because this is the fastest point of the course, this is the hardest brake zone. Typically, you want to be further over to the left than I am even right there. You want to be right there at the corner where the pavement has that brake in it. You want to be closer to the left than this. Use more of that outside to soften this turn.
And it's interesting, like back here, you and I have similar placement. And like you said, both of us should be a little bit further over to the left. But you actually walked the car, continued to walk the car out to the left towards that turn-in cone, which was interesting, where look how much space is different between you're at least a few feet further to the left versus me. I'm closer to the center of the track and I'm pinching myself off.
Well, this is one of those places where experience will help you because you realize, okay, I'm not where I need to be. What can I do to correct it? And you can do it gradually without upsetting the car. Just continue to let the car move over. Use as much of the space as possible. I mean, at this point, it's hard on the brakes.
And I'm not gonna lie, that like this particular turn-in point and braking area, it's intimidating. because you're coming down from 120 mile an hour, and if you're aiming towards that cone like you should be, you could potentially go off track there. And
well, you can see the tire marks where people have gone off.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they point out at this facility about this particular straightaway is the number of people that have lost their brakes coming into this turn.
Yeah.
And the main escape route for it is to go straight back into the
pits.
into the pit grid area, and they keep that road clear for that purpose so that you do have an escape route, so you're not going into a concrete wall or a fence.
Right.
And it gives you plenty of room to drive the car out if you don't have brakes. The other thing is here is you turned in a little bit too early.
Right.
Big heavy cars like this don't like to turn in that early, and it costs you in your, how much room you used back here in the back, where you're actually going from what is turn 10 into turn 1. This is just a really big double apex sweeper.
Right.
Turn 10 and turn 1. And you have to be able to use as much room as you can to try to cut out extra steering inputs. It keeps the car smoother, it keeps it better balanced to not have extra hand maneuvers in there.
Right.
Then 1, the inside curbing to 1.
Which you touched, it looks like.
No, I was probably
I'm looking at the right side of your car.
I was probably close to 2 feet off of that.
Okay.
I usually don't get all the way down to that curb. I've usually let the car move further out to help straighten up the run from the exit of 1 down to 2, so that the car is straighter longer, accelerating longer, going into turn 2, because that's upper 80s, 85 plus, where you get on the brakes. And depending on the tires, brake pads, how comfortable you are that day, as to where you actually really get on the brakes hard. You've got the 3 cones and 2 cones. In the EcoBoost, I'm usually about the second set of cones before I'm on the brakes.
Comment below and let us know if you're a beginner and have more questions for us that we can answer in a future video. Please let us know. If you're seasoned, have pointers for either of us as drivers, we are all ears. At the end of the day, we love taking these cars out, pushing them even further, whether it's the drivers that's being pushed or the parts themselves. Regardless, hit that like, subscribe, that notification bell, and don't forget the most important thing.
Speed matters.